That's the electrocution rhythm. None of those factors were in this case.
So in your opinion, is a taser a lethal weapon?
A lethal weapon. I would consider it a safe weapon, a good weapon. Can it cause death? I just told you, maybe 1 in 2 million, but I would not consider it a lethal weapon. Just like I wouldn't consider beanbags or pepper spray lethal weapons. Have people died after that? Yes.
So would you have subjected yourself to the taser if you believed that it could be lethal?
Definitely would not. If I thought it was a lethal weapon, no, that would be silly.
Are tasers classified as a deadly weapon in any of the medical literature that you're aware of?
No, I've never heard it be thought as a deadly weapon. In fact, the medical literature that I work with restraining violent or aggressive individuals often reflects the taser as a good way to try to gain control of somebody quickly to reduce that lactic acid production. Much better than wrestling with somebody for 5 or 10 minutes, much better than using bean bags, pepper spray, contacts, asps, hitting somebody, whatever it is, right? Those all cause bruises, cause ongoing pain, cause ongoing injuries. A taser, as soon as it's turned off, it's done with its activity. So you can think of it as humane that way from the perspective of there's no ongoing issues. But from a medical perspective, no, my medical group, the American College of Emergency Physicians, recommended considering that as a way to gain control of violent, aggressive individuals so that they can get medical help, reducing the risk of lactic acid production.
So how do confounding factors, and you might want to explain that term, how do confounding factors complicate your ability to determine a cause of death?
Right, so lots of things can lead to a death. For example, in this case, he had a 500-gram heart, which is significantly enlarged. A person with an enlarged heart compared to a person with a normal heart is at increased risk for sudden death from a cardiac arrest compared to the normal heart. It's just statistics. Being hot and an elevated body temperature is a confounding factor. Did that cause it? It's probably in the mix there. Did his resistance contribute to it? The exact exertion, that's very changing of your blood pH. So fighting, wrestling, resisting, moving your muscles back and forth, not a taser locking you up, but the resistance associated with trying to be handcuffed creates a lot of lactic acid production. That does have a confounding effect if somebody goes into cardiac arrest. It shifts their pH, makes the heart more irritable, can cause them to go into a sudden death. So trying to measure these things out, what happened and what didn't happen. The taser certainly caused some pain. We know that, but he didn't die when the taser was being used. There was no shot over the heart. There was no ventricular fibrillation. So a cause of the taser causing the cardiac arrest, no. Did it possibly contribute to the whole milieu of him resisting more? Possibly. He was certainly resisting the handcuffs and resisting being put into a restricted position. That certainly would do it. So the idea of confounders, trying to put them all together, sometimes, yes, it could be a little bit there, but the biggest piece was, had he just put his hand behind his back and said, handcuff me, or, yeah, I'm willing to go with you, we wouldn't be here today. So there's ultimate confounders.
So based on the video and the record, in your opinion, did the taser use contribute meaningfully to Mr. Martin's death?
No.
And if you could please, I know you've kind of talked about this, but explain your causation opinion regarding taser in this case.
So in this case, the taser was used. There were a number of trigger pulls. There was some activity that was likely conducted. There were a little bit in the arm initially, probably conducted, causing more pain compliance than anything else. That hurts. So the reaction to that was him to resist and fight more versus comply. Okay, that was what happened. And then there's a second taser activation, but that didn't kill him, right? That didn't cause a cardiac arrest, didn't cause his heart to stop, didn't create a bunch of changes in his body pH or anything like that in and of itself. Later, a taser was used in his back in probe mode, and there was likely some conduction there, but a close spread because the distance was not that far. So it was more pain compliance than the incapacitation. Doesn't matter. The physiologic effect is still more discomfort and pain. The response to that, the moving, the fighting, the resisting, is what creates the pH. So in and of itself, the taser didn't cause an electrocution. Okay, it didn't cause a change in his body pH balance, potassium balance, anything else, because we know tasers don't do that. And it's the response to that, the use of force, the hands-on, whatever, his inability to control himself, stop what needed to be done because of what was going on, that created the milieu that would lead him to have a cardiac arrest. not the actual electricity.
So returning to some of the other opinions that you shared earlier, explain how heat stroke can develop.
Yeah, it just develops over time. Exposure, heat, not recognizing it, not getting enough water, that sort of accelerates things. So staying hydrated is one of our best thing to try to reduce heat stroke and reduce exposure. That just sort of grows up over time. Body starts to get warm. You start to feel crappy. You sweat a little bit. That's why you're trying to cool off. Your body's sweating to cool off. And if you're not replenishing that, you get behind further. It can injure your organs. But then your body temperature starts to rise. If you're no longer able to dissipate, you remove that heat from your body, it starts to build up. And then as it builds up, it creates the changes that we worry about from people having ultramental status, and from ultramental status, their blood pressure drops, so they can have cardiac arrests. So it over time it will develop, and it can be fairly quickly, depending on how far along you are in that continuum.
So how can struggling against restraint compound heat illness, and why would that be dangerous in someone who's maybe hot, dehydrated, and delirious?
Yeah, so somebody who's already having a heat illness, right? Their blood temperature is high, or body temperature is high. They may be already dehydrated. Fighting against that is just adding more stress to your body, right? You're creating more lactic acid. You're making your body more abnormal that way. You may be generating more energy and heat in itself. You won't raise your body temperature, but you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're warming your body up rather than trying to cool it down. If you want to cool down, you're going to go to a cool environment, sit there, try to air condition, put some water on you, not fight and exercise, not go to the gym, right? That's not going to do you any good if you have already elevated body heat. So the idea of struggling with already having an elevated body temperature is obviously just adding insult to the injury there.
Were there any labs or autopsy findings consistent with this theory of hyperthermia?
There is, yeah.
And could you go into those, please?
Yeah, the main findings were there weren't a lot of other findings, and in part they found evidence of some dehydration on the labs. The medical examiner reported, as well as an elevated body temperature a few hours after death. So it was in the 103 plus range, 103.2 or so. So that's consistent with a hyperthermic, a heat-related illness.
Now, I understand that the temperature we're talking about was a post-mortem temperature. In your opinion, would you expect the body temperature to continue to rise after someone's death?
So in general, we unfortunately have people who die in our department. People tend to cool off when they're in cardiac arrest. You know, they're no longer generating their own energy. They're not moving around. Their body temperatures start to fall. So if your body temperature is normally 98.6, in a cardiac arrest patient who gets brought in by EMS, they may already be down to 96 or 97 when they get to me in the ER, just by virtue of the fact that their blood's not circulating, they're not creating their own energy. So after cardiac arrest, bodies tend to cool off a little bit. That's the in general. So when you see an elevated body temperature, it's likely was probably a couple degrees higher prior to what you saw. That's sort of a rule of thumb.
And is that true whether that's a rectal temperature or otherwise?
Rectal temperature is the one you want. Ear temperatures, the forehead temperatures, those can be off a little bit. They're not considered core body temperatures, so rectal temperature is sort of the gold standard.
How did the time course, from onset of struggle to collapse, how did that inform your opinion?
So again, there was a bit of struggle going on initially, and then a second bout of struggle going on with a second taser activation. That time course, from the perspective of having somebody who's already enlarged heart, stressed physiologically, elevated body temperature, that's the type of thing you would normally see somebody who's just sort of doing a physiologic stress test, unbeknownst to them, right? They're confused, they're delusional, they're in a state where they can't follow commands and are just resisting. That timeline is consistent with a sudden cardiac arrest due to a metabolic disruption, a cardiac arrhythmia due to all those things happening, because the big heart's bad, body temperature is bad for your hearts over time, associated with the lactic acid, associated with all those other things. That just sort of creates that, and eventually the heart just gives out. It also goes against the taser, because again, once taser's going to kill you, it's going to kill you while the trigger's being pulled, you're standing, you fall down, you're dead, they find you in VFib. Didn't happen here.
Now, you've discussed heat illness and struggling against restraint. Was this death, in your opinion, medically foreseeable to an outside observer?
No, I wouldn't have expected him to die based on the video I initially saw either. So I don't see why anybody else would have thought this was going to be ultimately he was going to have a cardiac arrest.
So, again, in your opinion, had EMTs been called to deal with Mr. Martin first, given what you've observed, how might that have altered the outcome? And if you could explain your answer to that.
So again, if the EMTs have been called first, I don't expect Mr. Martin to have changed his decision that he suddenly wants to be transported. Just having done this for 30 years and knowing the way these types of patients, they're delusional, they're paranoid, they're aggressive. EMTs could have shown up, talked to him. He's going to do the same thing, just keep on walking. Not going to talk to you at all, just like he did with the officers. More likely that's what's going to happen. And then they're going to say, yeah, he's not right. We need to take him to the hospital. And so law enforcement's going to have to engage to get him into a position so they can put him on the gurney and then put him to restraint. So you'd be in the same position. It just happened to be observed by EMTs rather than without the EMTs being there.
So, moving on to some other observations that you might have made for the video, did you observe deputies applying any dangerous pressure to any part of Mr. Martin's body?
I didn't know.
And did you see anyone kneeling on Mr. Martin's neck or back in any kind of sustained way?
I didn't know.
Now, you didn't see anything on the video. Did the autopsy support a finding of any kind of asphyxial death caused by pressure on the torso or to the neck or anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't see anything in the autopsy that pointed to asphyxiation as being a cause of death in this case, no.
And did the autopsy include any findings of bruising, significant contusions or lacerations, or other significant external injuries?
I mean, there were things noted, but nothing that I would consider significant, not that you wouldn't see during a scuffle.
So what are you able to conclude from that lack of information in the, or the lack of any of those findings in the autopsy report?
Yeah, basically the lack of finding any significant bruising or pressure areas implies basically that there were no strikes or injuries associated with sort of we call distraction strikes or mass strikes or punches or anything like that, or sustained pressure on the neck or back that would be concerning.
So how do you differentiate cause of death when there are multiple stressors that are present?
It's more challenging that way, right? Ultimately, he had a cardiac arrest. His heart stopped. And then you have to sort of look at what may or may not have contributed. Certainly, the resistance didn't help him, the struggling that he was doing, the fighting and all that. The body temperature, the physiologic stressor, that falls into it. The dehydration, physiologic stressor, puts your body at risk for bad things to happen. So all those things put together likely what caused the cardiac arrest. And then the question is, did the taser contribute or not? And again, if you want to sort of say, well, it caused him some pain and he resisted more, maybe a little lactic acid from that. Okay, sure. But from the perspective of the taser itself, expecting to cause lactic acid changes, physiologic changes, things that can cause sudden death, no, it didn't do that.
So, and I know one of the things we also see on the video is once Mr. Martin is finally handcuffed, are there any inherent dangers to being prone to laying flat with handcuffs behind the back?
No, there's no physiologic advantage or disadvantage to being on your stomach. You're laying flat with your handcuffs behind your back. If you think about laying on the ground, put your hands behind your back, it's not going to affect the way you breathe or feel or anything like that, no.
So you've shared your opinions on this, and I want to sort of get to the point of that. Can you conclude, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, what caused Mr. Martin's death?
Yes.
And what is that conclusion?
He had a cardiac arrest, and the contributing factors were the resistance and struggling, basically his body movement creating that lactic acid, body temperature, elevation, dehydration, and an enlarged heart. Those would be considered the things that caused that cardiac arrest.
Was prone positioning a substantial factor?
No.
Was heat, dehydration, and physical struggle the primary driver?
Yes.
Did you find evidence that the taser triggered a fatal arrhythmia?
No evidence.
Did you find evidence that restraint alone caused fatal asphyxia?
No.
What most likely triggered his spinal collapse?
The trigger is it's all that stuff put together, right? It's all that stressors on this heart. And so it happened at that moment. Why not 5 minutes earlier, why not 5 minutes later? That I can't tell you, right? People die in marathons every day, all the time. It sounds bad, but they do. Why mile 17 versus mile 16 or mile 18? So why that exact moment? Can't tell you. But I can tell you he had a lot of stress on an already enlarged abnormal heart. And it's likely that continued resistance until he stopped resisting that tipped him over.
And you've reviewed the autopsy report and the medical examiner's opinion.
Yes.
How does your opinion compare to the medical examiner's conclusions?
Pretty much the same. He has the taser and there's a possibility. And I mentioned that earlier that, yes, if you want to consider the taser may have caused him some pain that caused him to fight more, that's possible. But in and of itself, it did not do anything physiologically directly that would cause the cardiac arrest.
Is your opinion consistent with the objective medical evidence?
It is, yes.
Is your opinion consistent with accepted emergency medical principles?
It is, yes.
Would you hold the same opinion if this were a patient in your ER with the very same findings?
Absolutely.
1 second. Did you also review the toxicology records in the autopsy report?
I did, yes.
And were there any findings in there consistent with him taking any type of medication for schizophrenia?
I didn't see anything in there, no.
All right. Nothing further. Thank you.
Statement, question to the witness.
Your Honor, I would request a brief recess.
All right, it's 10:30. We'll take our mid-morning break, 15 minutes. Are all the jurors back? Counsel ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bring them out, please. You may be seated. You may proceed.
Good morning. Just to be clear, you're not testifying regarding excited delirium, is that true?
Correct.
That's not your diagnosis.
That is correct.
And you're aware that California enacted a law, AB 360, that prohibits the use of excited delirium in similar terms as a recognized medical diagnosis or cause of death on death certificates and in law enforcement reports.
They did pass that, yes.
And Colorado has also passed a measure that bans the use of the term in police training materials and reports as well as autopsy reports. Did you know that?
I do, yeah.
And Minnesota has also restricted and banned the term from being used in police training, and it has a bill pending to prohibit its use in death certificates, autopsies, and law enforcement reports. Did you know that?
I knew they were looking into it.
Did you know that several other states, including New York and Hawaii, have introduced legislation to curb the use of the term? Did you know that?
Wasn't familiar with those.
You did not, or
I was not familiar that they had started that, no.
not familiar with that?
Correct.
Are you aware that major medical and forensic organizations do not recognize excited delirium? They include the American Medical Association,
They do not, sure.
the American Psychiatric Association,
Correct.
the World Health Organization,
Sure.
the National Association of Medical Examiners,
They did originally, but then they've retracted that.
and the American College of Emergency Physicians, of which you're a member.
Correct. They acknowledged it in 2009 and retracted it in 2023, yes.
The physicians for, did you know that the physicians for human rights say the term is junk science that's been used disproportionately to explain away deaths in police custody? Did you know that?
I know they put out papers that criticize it, sure.
Do you know that in June 14th of 2021, the American Medical Association put out the following statement? We oppose excited delirium as a medical diagnosis. The policy addresses reports that show a pattern of using the term excited delirium as a justification for excessive police force. Were you aware of that?
I'm aware of that, yeah.
In the past, have you testified about excited delirium?
In the past, yes, I have.
And you have in the case of Daniel Cruz, is that correct?
In a grand jury, yes.
Grand jury hearing, yes.
Correct.
And also Miguel Ruiz, which I believe was a civil case.
That sounds familiar, sure.
And Laquan, is it Pouncy? Pouncy?
Oh, Fonzie, I think, yes.
Now, you were saying that Eurie Martin, according to your view of the videos, mumbled it was incoherent, is that correct?
Based on my auditory of the videos, I did not hear him say anything that was coherent, and the comments in the reports said that he was not saying anything that was understandable to the officers.
You're not aware that he said, when the police approached him, Ain did nothing? You're not aware of that?
I'm not sure. I don't recall that.
And you didn't hear him say, well, y'all do that, Jim? You didn't hear that?
I did hear something along those lines, maybe when the taser was being done.
And you didn't hear him say, leave me alone, did you?
I don't recall that specifically.
You didn't hear him say, I ain't messing with you, man, did you?
I'd have to listen to it again.
And you didn't hear him say, I did nothing, did you?
Right, yeah, these are not orientation questions, but I don't recall the specifics, yes.
Did you hear him say, you got a weapon on me twice at the end?
No, I don't recall that.
Did you hear him say, what the heck are you talking about?
No?
Did you hear him say, they're killing me 3 separate times?
I don't recall that, but it could have happened. I was again looking for orientation and being able to have capacity to make a decision, not just being reactive to something that's going on.
I understand. And finally, did you hear him say, this is America, this is not a crime?
I don't recall that specifically. Again, not that I'm looking for him speaking, but things that would actually show that he has capacity to be able to be let go or let free safely from a medical emergency.
Would you agree it would have been important to know whether he was speaking coherently and addressing the situation?
It's not the coherent part, it's what he's saying. Reactive stuff to painful stimuli or things like that is sort of a rudimentary, basic. People do that. People who are very delusional can do that. I see that all the time. But people who have capacity will actually talk to, actually communicate and explain what's going on, not just have the rudimentary responses to pain or discomfort.
Well, the truth is some do and some don't, isn't that correct?
Most people who are significantly incapacitated will still be able to talk about things like they're talking about, those comments, but will not be able to give a coherent, I've got a plan, this is where I live, this is where I'm going, this is my name, those types of things.
Isn't it true that some people simply don't want to be bothered?
That can happen, sure.
You talk about decompensation, well, I'd like to take a minute and talk about compensation. You said you bill $750 an hour,
That's correct.
and that was for 40 hours in this case.
Yes, roughly.
So the math would be $30,000
Over the years, yes.
over the years. You also, returning to the theme of decompensation, you said if decompensated, someone would not react differently to a police officer or a postman. Is that correct?
I said typically, yes.
Did you review David Blizzard's testimony?
I did not review David Blizzard's testimony.
Oh, so you're not aware that David Blizzard was a postman who encountered Eurie Martin?
Oh, he's the guy who saw it. Yeah, I'm familiar with it, but I don't recall specifically.
So you don't know whether or not, according to your testimony, Mr. Martin was exhibiting the symptoms you described to the jury when he interacted with Mr. Blizzard?
I don't know what symptoms specifically he was interacting with Mr. Blizzard because I was not given that testimony.
Did you know you reviewed the autopsy?
I did, yes.
Are you aware that Lehman's determination was that Mr. Martin was only slightly dehydrated?
That's what he said, mild dehydration, I believe.
Mild dehydration.
Yep.
And you said that in your testimony that the police simply couldn't let him wander away because he could wind up dead.
I said, based on his clinical presentation, I would not allow this person to be let wander away by me or my EMS providers because he was not showing capacity and would likely end up dead.
Of course, he wound up dead anyway, didn't he?
He did end up dead, yes.
You said that the taser is a simple weapon that has no risk to the human heart. Is that correct? Unless the probe goes directly into the heart?
Or if a pacemaker potentially, but
I want to show you State's Exhibit 32 and take a look at that and see if you recognize State's Exhibit 32. We've had a moment I'd like to talk to you about that.
yeah, I'm not familiar with this one specifically, but I've reviewed many of the taser guidelines.
Okay, so you're aware that the taser guidelines contain specific warnings about use of a taser against people with heart conditions?
Again, I have to look at it, but if a known heart condition, then you would try to avoid that if it's a known heart condition, sure.
And also, people who are exhausted, would you agree with that? According to the taser's all warning.
I'd have to look at that line specifically, but
Take your time.
I'm trying to read the whole page. I don't see where it says exhausted, but that's okay. I may be missing it.
We come back to that. In the meantime, let me ask you this. You said that you're not aware of any cases in which somebody was killed by a taser.
I don't think I said that. I said
What was your exact phrase?
I said two things. One is that there is at least one case where it looks like the taser caused direct cardiac capture and ventricular fibrillation. And those cases in which people have fallen, caught fire, or drowned type of thing after taser use. Those are associated with taser versus direct use of the probes that cause somebody to have a death.
So you're not aware of Everhart versus the state? That's just up the road here in Atlanta. That's October 31st of 2019. Are you familiar with that case?
It's not published in the medical literature that I'm aware of now.
Would you like me to read the holding of that case to you?
Not really, but this is a judgment rather than a medical interpretation looking at the data. So what's in there is not necessarily the entire
Well, I'm trying to make
findings.
you aware. You said there's no case. This is one that you can use from this.
Oh, okay. I love all the details of it, where the probes were located, the numbers of trigger pulls, the weight of the person, the height of the person, all that information before you make a determination.
And the holding of the court was the evidence was sufficient to convict defendant, a former police sergeant, of felony murder based on aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Specifically, a taser, because the medical examiner determined that the victim died from hypertensive cardiovascular disease, exacerbated by physical exertion, and conducted electrical stimulation from the application of the taser's drive-stun mode. There was no evidence of exigent circumstances that would have justified tasing the victim while his hands were cuffed behind his back, and the state presented evidence that the repeated tasings of the victim in drive-stun mode over a span of 20 minutes when he was exhausted from running and handcuffed behind his back that only inflicted intense physical pain, but also materially accelerated the death minutes later.
So
Are you familiar with that case?
I just told you I'm not, but that's a drive stun mode. That causes pain. I told you that. That's not going to electrocute anybody. It's not going to cause a sudden death. The guy had cardiovascular disease, which means he had bad heart that was stressed by his physiology of exertion. And then the medical examiner there opined that the pain may have caused it, but it didn't cause a direct death.
That's correct. You're aware the state's not contending that these tasers electrocuted Eurie Martin. Are you aware of that?
I'm not sure what your allegations, because the taser didn't kill Eurie Martin.
But you have not discussed our theory of the case with defense.
They weren't sure of your theory, other than that you thought the taser may have caused the death, but the reality is there's no electrocution, and certainly there's no physiologic changes induced by a taser, whether it's probe mode or drive stun mode, that's going to cause a sudden death.
No, that's not our position. Our position, I'll make clear, is that he was not electrocuted, but similar to this case, because of his pre-existing heart condition, because of the exhaustion, because of the hypothermia, that it contributed materially to his death, or accelerated his death. That's our position.
Materially, no. There was almost no conduction in this case, and it was remote to the use of the taser. So I get your theory, but it just doesn't. The hyperthermia of 103 plus, big heart, exhausted, hot temperatures, that's significant. A few drive stun modes or some painful compliance isn't going to do it. I understand what the court interpreted there. That's their interpretation. But from a medical perspective, it doesn't change physiology that should cause somebody to die.
I understand completely. This is just the jury's interpretation,
Understood.
and the court supporting the jury's interpretation of what happened.
Understood, but it doesn't follow the medical data that's out there with regards to, particularly that case, drive stun.
Talking of cross purposes. Your Honor, I would move to tender state's exhibit, tender Everhart versus the state into evidence as state's exhibit 33.
So do not object based on the continuing witness rule.
Response as far as the continuing witness rule?
I think that's probably fair. I'll have an opportunity to explore it in closing argument, read it once more to the jury, with the understanding that the case itself will not go back to the jury.
Sustain. Sustain the objection.
I also have put my own notes on the front of it. I'll need to redact this of those also.
Sustain the objection, the exhibit's not going in.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Your Honor, just to be clear, on the record, you have not admitted that exhibit, correct?
Sustain means it is not admitted into evidence.
Thank you.
I don't have any further questions for the witness.
Any redirect?
Dr. Phil, are you familiar with any sort of medical terminology that is updated over time?
Sure.
Is medical terminology static?
As things evolve and more information comes out, treatments change, diagnoses change, the names of diagnoses change. We have lot of diseases that have new names based on new data, new treatments. So yeah, it's part of medicine.
you were asked about coherence. Does coherence necessarily only mean the ability to form words?
No, coherence means to be able to interact. People can say things rudimentarily. I mean, I've got people who are just, completely out of things, but you put the IV in and they recognize, ow, that hurts, stuff like that, but nothing else is functional. So just because certain phrases are said doesn't mean that they are aware, alert, appropriate, understand what's going on. They just have this baseline, this hurts, I'm out, stop it, F this, whatever it is. They have these baseline things that they do.
So does a coherent response include one that is appropriate to the circumstances?
To the circumstances, that can be considered coherent, yes.
Is coherence the only factor that you consider?
No.
So you were also asked about some information that you were apparently not aware of. Are you able to make medical decisions based on information that you don't know?
Information that I don't know. I typically would not make a medical decision. I may have a thought process, but not necessarily a final decision.
So would law enforcement officers be able to diagnose a certain condition based on information that they don't have?
No, they shouldn't.
One second.
Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to pick up the question.
You may.
Dr. Bill, in regards to the case that Mr. Lipscomb asked you about, the Everhart versus the state, would you believe in most cases it would be inappropriate to tase somebody who's handcuffed behind their back?
I would, I'm not a law enforcement expert, but it seems like that would not necessarily be needed if they're already handcuffed.
Well, based on your experience with the taser device.
Correct. It shouldn't be needed.
And based on this case, would you think that it would be a reasonable use of the taser device to tase somebody that was handcuffed behind their back in order to get them to walk to the patrol car?
If their hands were already cupped behind their back, to use it to, again, I'm not a police practices expert, so you're trying to move somebody along, that's a law enforcement decision. But I would, again, somebody who's already handcuffed usually does not need to be tasered.
In your review of the materials, videos, et cetera, did Mr. Martin make any statement about having an enlarged heart?
He did not.
Did he make any statement about having a former cocaine dependency?
He did not.
Did he make any statements to the officers that he had walked some 20-plus miles in this heat from Milledgeville on his way to San Diego?
He did not.
Did he make any of the statements that you observed on the videos, which you were able to watch repeatedly, did he make any statements that you would have believed were coherent statements that were consistent with your medical knowledge of somebody being coherent?
Right, the things he said, were in response to something that's happening to him. So the rudimentary stuff, I did not see anything that was coherent in the sense of he was alert, he was oriented, he was answering a question that was asked to him. He did say statements, but that was, again, people do that in my ER who are completely unable to do anything else as far as communicate, but yet you put an IV into them or you do a spinal tap, they say things because they can feel the pain in the base. Our body can sort of pop that out, but it's not coherent, it's not an orientation, it's not thoughtful.
In your review of the evidence, did you observe the law enforcement officers, Deputy Howell, Deputy Copeland, Deputy Scott, giving Mr. Martin repeated commands?
I did, yes.
Did you observe Mr. Martin comply with any of those repeated commands given by any of these three officers?
I did not.
How would you view that from a medical standpoint, someone who you believe was suffering under one of these conditions?
Well, again, the idea that you're not following commands, following instructions, answering questions, you put that all together, right? In and of itself, some people can be defiant, sure. But when you put it together with all the other things going on, it's medically concerning.
Based on your review of the materials, once Mr. Martin was detained in handcuffs, was there any use of force done on him by
No.
Thank you. No additional questions.
I do have some follow-up. I found it. All right.
All right.
If you will, take a moment and look at the wording in this box. We've had a chance to look at that. Let me know. I'd like you to read it into the record.
Okay, I see that box, yep.
What does that say?
It doesn't have exhaustion like you mentioned, but it says CEWs, or conductive energy weapons, have risks, and CEW use and physical incapacitation, comma, alone or in combination with physical exertion, stress, unforeseen circumstances, or individual susceptibilities may increase or cause serious injury or death.
No further questions.
Any further questions from defendants?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
May the witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Excuse, sir, you may leave or remain in the courtroom, whichever
you
you
very
wish.
much.
Thank you. Defendants may call their next witness.
Judge, defense calls Dr. Michael Graham.
Look,
Have a seat and make yourself comfortable, please. Raise your right hand, please. You swear the evidence and testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth?
Yes.
God? Thank you. So please state and spell your name for the jury.
Michael Graham, Graham.
And what do you do for a living, Dr. Graham?
I'm a forensic pathologist.
And tell the jury a little bit about what that is.
If you look at all the major specialties in medicine, pathology is one of the big ones, like there's surgery and internal medicine. Pathology is the large one that deals with the basic nature of diseases and injuries, how they occur, what they look like, what effects they have on people. Within the broad area of pathology, there are some fairly narrow areas, one being forensic pathology that deals with pathology issues that come up in public forums such as this.
And there's other areas of pathology besides forensic pathology, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have any experience in those?
Yeah, the two major subdivisions of pathology in general is anatomic pathology, which is the study of the tissues of the body, and clinical pathology, which is more the laboratory aspects. And so to receive subspecialty certification like forensic pathology, you also have to have certification in at least one of the major areas, either anatomic or clinical.
And tell me a little bit about your educational background, please.
Yeah, I went to college at St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri. I received my undergrad degree in 1973, stayed at St. Louis U, received my MD in 1977. I then went to St. Luke's Hospital in Houston, Texas for 4 years to train in anatomic and clinical pathology, and then went back to St. Louis for another year of training in forensic pathology.
And that takes us to about the late 70s, is that correct?
It takes us to 81, through 81.
Okay. And then from there, where did you go?
I've stayed in St. Louis since then.
Okay. And along the way, have you taken any board exams or have any board certifications?
Yeah, I'm certified by the American Board of Pathology in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology.
Okay. And that's been the sole focus of your career, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Give us a little bit of a flavor of what you were doing from 1981 up until present.
Yeah, I've been a medical examiner either in the city of St. Louis or in some of the suburban counties. I was the chief medical examiner for the city of St. Louis until a couple of years ago, so 30 some odd years. I'm also a professor of pathology at St. Louis University at the medical school.
Okay. And how long did you serve as the chief medical examiner for St. Louis?
I was a little over 30 years. I've been with the office, or was with the office for 40 years, 41 years, and chief for, I think, 32 or 33 of them.
So during that time as the medical examiner and a chief medical examiner, were you working, what types of cases were you working on?
At least in the medical examiner world, we deal with people who die suddenly and unexpectedly for any reason whatsoever, or some sort of outside influence, such as drugs or violence, may have played a role in death.
And that was in the city of St. Louis, so you were working with prosecutors mostly?
Prosecutors and defense, more prosecutors.
Okay. And about how many autopsies have you performed in your career?
Oh, either performed or directly supervised, more than 10,000.
Okay. And do you belong to any professional societies or committees?
I do.
Tell us about those, please.
Oh, let's see. I'm a fellow in the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. I'm a fellow in the National Association of Medical Examiners. I belong to the Pulmonary Pathology Society. I belong to the Society for Cardiovascular Pathology and the College of American Pathologists.
Tell me about what your contributions to those organizations are, or your roles in them.
Yeah, in the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, I was chairman of the Pathology Biology section. I was president and chairman of the board of the National Association of Medical Examiners.
So you just mentioned you were the past chairman and president of the National Board of Medical Examiners?
I mean, I was a president, not the past president.
Okay. So tell the jury exactly what that organization is.
It goes by the acronym of NAME, but it's the organization of medical examiners, or professional organization of medical examiners, primarily in the United States and Canada, but we do have international members.
Do they set standards for medical examiners around the country?
Recommendations and some standards.
Okay. And the same standards that you would use in your medical practice?
Yes.
Same medical standards that Dr. Keith Lehman would use in his medical practice?
Presumably.
Okay. And do you tell me about some of the focuses of your research and your teaching?
My major interests are, over the years, have been in heart and lung. Because of my training in Houston, which at the time was probably one of the top 2 or 3 surgical cardiovascular surgical centers in the world. I just happened to see a lot of heart and lung and was interested in it. I became interested in sudden death in young people. And then over the last several years, probably the last actually more than several, I became interested in why people die when they're undergoing forcible restraint, especially when they're in a state of marked agitation.
So that would mean in custody deaths?
That would include in custody deaths.
That include arrest-related deaths?
Yes.
What about any research or anything like that with regard to the use of taser?
I mean, I've been tasered, and I've also studied how and what the wounds caused by the taser darts look like in human beings.
So you said you've done about over 10,000 autopsies in the course of your career. Have any of those involved, the backstories of those involved the use of a taser?
Small number of them have, yes.
Okay. So, have you written or contributed to textbooks that other medical examiners use in training?
Yes.
Tell us about those.
Over the years, I've written a few dozen articles in the scientific literature and a couple of dozen book chapters and a few books.
Okay, all dealing with forensic pathology.
Yes.
What about you've either held or hold a pretty high position, as I understand it, with the National Association of Medical Examiners. That must come along with making speeches and presentations or anything like that.
Being the president of NAME did come along with making speeches, but they were more about general forensic. As far as the custody-related death, it's more of my role as a professor.
In
and a medical
addition to
examiner.
teaching as a professor at St. Louis University, you also make speeches and presentations on forensic pathology to other medical examiners. Is that right?
I do.
Okay. About how regularly?
Oh, at least a few times a year now. It used to be more regular before I started to cut back.
I understand. Have you previously been qualified as an expert witness in forensic pathology?
Many times.
Okay, in state and federal courts?
Yes.
Just in Missouri?
All over the country.
All over the country, okay? Including this court,
Yes.
okay? And detail for me specifically your taser experience.
Well, because of my interest in why people die when they're potentially being forcibly restrained, I have to know a lot about the different methods of restraint, one of which is electricity, and electricity is delivered by tasers. So for that part of my professional practice, I have to know a fair amount about them. As I said earlier, I've also been tasered, and I sit on the Medical and Scientific Advisory Board of what used to be Taser, it's now called Axon.
Okay, so you hold a position on a board within the company that makes tasers, is that right?
I'm not part of the company, I'm an outside consultant.
Okay.
But I do sit on, I am one of their advisors,
Sure, you're on their scientific board?
scientific and medical.
Okay, and why would the Axon company want to hire someone like you to consult for them?
There's two major reasons. One being to address issues related to their products or the weapons. The other is that in many of these cases, other abnormalities or other uses of force are being employed, and they want a forensic pathology perspective on things unrelated to their devices, but related to the people the devices are being used on.
Would you say you fill sort of a safety role within that organization?
So, I mean, some of the issues we address involve safety, but I'm not a safety person per se.
About them being the use of a taser being medically sound.
That would be part of the advice, yes.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what I've marked as Defense Exhibit number 44. Recognize that?
I do.
Jury, what that is.
This is a copy of my CV or my resume.
This time, Judge, I'm going to ask that Defense Exhibit number 44 be admitted into evidence.
No objection.
Defendant's 44 is admitted.
Okay, and so, Dr. Graham, I'll go back to Axon briefly. You're a consultant. You're paid for the work that you do for them. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And are you paid based on whether you give them a specific result or answer?
No.
Okay. The answer is what the answer is.
Yes.
It's similar to what you're doing here today. Your services in testifying and reviewing this case aren't free either, are they?
Correct.
Tell the jury exactly what the basis of your compensation for reviewing the case is.
Yeah, the university bills my time at $500 an hour.
Okay, so it's the university that is being compensated for your time.
The university does all the billing, and I get a part of it back as my compensation, but it all goes, it's part of my university responsibility.
Okay, and at this time, Judge, I would tender him as an expert in anatomic and clinical pathology, forensic pathology, taser with regard to medical issues, and arrest-related deaths.
Does the state wish to question the witness on expert qualification?
No, I'll accept him as an expert on forensic pathology, and I'll allow him to testify on all other matters.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you may recognize the witness as an expert in the area of forensic pathology and also to be able to testify about related issues, medical.
Now, Dr. Graham, you don't tailor your opinions to suit whoever hires you, is that right?
Excuse me, I object to that as being bolstering.
Judge, that's a credibility question. That's a question for the jury.
Going to sustain it at this point, however, depending upon cross-examination, I may allow it at that point.
So,
You know what, I am gonna cross him on that, so I'll retract that. I think that it would be a fair question, just to save time.
All right. You may ask and have the question answered.
I will. So, your opinions don't change based on which side of the courtroom you're sitting on, is that right?
Right.
The vast majority of your of you being called to court in your career has probably been for prosecutors, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and in this case, your opinions apply the same. You apply the same medical principles as you would in every other forensic pathology case. Is that right?
Yes.
So your methodology doesn't change.
Right.
So I want to bring you up to speed on this case. You were asked to review certain materials. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you detail, did you take an independent review of all of those materials that we gave you?
I did.
Okay. And can you detail for the jury exactly what it is that you looked at in coming to an opinion, if you did in this case?
Yeah, I had various investigative reports from law enforcement. I had the medical examiner's file. The records included photographs, both of the scene and the body at the morgue, and some video.
Okay. So that included the autopsy,
Yes.
the toxicology reports?
Yes.
Both drugs and alcohol?
Yes.
Okay. And there was a full Georgia Bureau of Investigation file, is that right?
Yes.
That was about 2,000 pages.
I don't recall how big it was, but it was long.
Included Eurie Martin's medical records, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything else that you were asking for that we didn't give you access to in order to form an opinion?
No.
Would there have been anything else that you wouldn't have needed in order to form an opinion?
No.
Okay. So that allowed you to form an opinion in this case to a reasonable degree of medical certainty.
Yes.
And with regard to that, let's go into the actual cause of death. It was listed as sudden cardiac arrhythmia during police restraint. Right? Would you tell the jury about that? And I would like to give you the.
Okay.
States consider.
Thanks.
Now, did you agree with Dr. Lehman's cause of death that he listed in this case?
I mean, it's not the way that I would have written it, but when you look at all of the information that he has given and his opinions, I basically agree with him.
So, what was?
I apologize, I didn't catch that answer.
I basically agree overall with Dr. Lehman as far as cause of death. I wouldn't have written it the way that he wrote it.
Okay. I think you said written was the word I couldn't understand.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you.
So, was that what changes would you have made?
I think I would have put the heart disease, instead of just writing arrhythmia, I would have moved the heart disease up and said that it was exacerbated by the forcible restraint.
Okay. And there's no way for the deputies, the EMTs, or even a trained medical doctor, just looking at Mr. Martin to know that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question as being leading.
Sustained.
Would there have been a lot of unknowns to someone just looking at Mr. Martin?
Yes,
Okay, what wouldn't they have known about Mr. Martin just looking at him?
they wouldn't have known why he was behaving in the fashion that he was behaving. They wouldn't have known if he had any underlying medical conditions, and they wouldn't have known that he was going to die.
Okay, and can cardiac arrhythmia cause a person to collapse suddenly without warning?
Yes.
Okay, tell the jury about that.
I mean, for us to stay awake and carry out activities, our brain has to be working. And for our brain to be working, it's got to get blood. And so if you have an abnormal heart rhythm where the heart is not pumping blood to the brain, then the brain basically malfunctions and you pass out.
So you had an opportunity to review some of the videos in this case, or actually all of the videos in this case, leading up to Mr. Martin's death, did you not?
I did.
And based on your view of those videos, did you see Mr. Martin intensely struggling,
Yes.
or hear him intensely struggling with deputies?
Yes.
And how does that level of exertion affect things like his heart rate or his adrenaline or his oxygen demand?
Given the way that he was behaving before, he would have already had his cardiovascular system amped up because of the emotional aspect of it. When you put physical exertion, especially a fighting type of situation, that then will, at least theoretically, cause further increase in the emotion, as well as increase in the stress on the cardiovascular system to make up for that exertion that you're carrying out. So you would expect heart rate to go up, would be the major thing.
So later in the videos, we saw the deputies actually putting their hands on Mr. Martin. Is that correct?
Yes.
So in an earlier part of the videos, we saw Mr. Martin walking up the hill. Is that right?
Yes.
When deputies confronted him, did you see him acting in an agitated state?
He was.
Okay, and what was he doing?
I mean, he wasn't behaving like an appropriate, sober, mature adult would behave under that situation. And given his history of schizophrenia with paranoia and hallucinations, that's not terribly surprising. And then he wasn't obeying what the police officers were telling him to do.
Even before Sergeant Copeland and Deputy Howell tased him or put their hands on him, he was already in a state of agitation. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that could have raised his risk level for a cardiac event. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So, Doctor, is it your opinion that Mr. Martin's own physical exertion was a significant factor in triggering that fatal heart arrhythmia?
Yes.
Okay, tell the jury about that.
If you look at all the different ways people can exert themselves, probably one of the most stressful is physical exertion. If you will, hand-to-hand fighting, wrestling, that type of thing, as opposed to running or being tased or any number of other activities. The one that's most detrimental in producing acid from muscle contraction is physical fighting.
So I want to go back to Dr. Lehman's categorization of or classification of the cause of death as cardiac arrhythmia during police restraint. I want you, does that mean that Mr. Martin died because of police restraint necessarily?
No, the way it's written, it just says it temporarily was related to it.
Okay, so it's about timing.
Yes.
Okay, and did you find any evidence that the police restraint caused Mr. Martin's death?
Not the restraint itself. I think the reaction to the restraint by Mr. Martin was important.
Okay, tell the jury about why you think that's important.
I mean, there's nothing about holding somebody, handcuffing them or holding them down in the manner that he was held down. That should be detrimental, or at least significantly detrimental. And so if law enforcement just holds you there, can do that almost indefinitely, but it's the fighting against it that generates the stress on the cardiovascular system, ramps up the emotion, increases the amount of acid the muscles are producing as they're contracting. Not what the officers are doing itself, but it's how or anybody, but Mr. Martin in this case, is trying to, I guess, if you will, get out of that situation.
And this was on top of other medically concerning factors in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
So what were those other medically concerning factors?
From a clinical standpoint, he had high blood pressure, and then that's reflected in the pathology of his heart was bigger than expected for his body size, and there was also some scarring of the heart muscle, which is abnormal. He also had the history of schizophrenia, which explains his behavior. It also puts him at risk for sudden death, especially when markedly agitated. And then he also had a history of cocaine abuse, which also can be detrimental to the heart long term.
Would there have been scarring of the heart from that cocaine abuse?
Could be. You could also see it from the high blood pressure.
So that cocaine abuse would have enlarged his heart.
It could have, assuming that it's over a long period of time and fairly regular, but I couldn't distinguish that from what the high blood pressure could do.
How does any evidence of hyperthermia play into this?
I don't think the hyperthermia was terribly important. There is a condition associated with schizophrenia, some other mental disorders, and certain drug use where body temperature skyrockets, often 105, 106 and above, which is associated with a very high rate of death.
So you say that hyperthermia was not necessarily a standalone concern. Would it have been a concern if taken into account with all of these other factors?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about this because I think his body temperature was a little bit elevated. They did a rectal temperature at the hospital, and I think it was 103. Usually rectal temperatures are a tiny bit higher than oral, so it's a few degrees high. That could be all from the fighting and things like that. I'm not convinced that it's this independent entity that we occasionally see that's associated with very high risk of death.
Certainly wasn't helping, though.
Well, it didn't help, but I don't think it was that significant.
Okay. And I want to talk about any other findings from the report. Mr. Martin wasn't beaten.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Martin wasn't beaten.
Correct.
Did you find that there was any neck trauma?
No.
You had an opportunity to look at all the autopsy photos in this case, is that right?
Autopsy and scene.
Okay. And did you see anything abnormal that wasn't caught by Dr. Lehman?
No.
Okay. So no broken bones.
No.
He wasn't stabbed.
Nope.
Shot.
Nope.
He wasn't electrocuted, was he?
It was not.
Tell us about that. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't a taser was used? An electronic control device was used. Why wouldn't he have been electrocuted?
Whether a taser can actually electrocute an adult is controversial. If it happens, it is vanishingly rare. I'm not sure it's ever been demonstrated reliably, but in any event, you could probably count on one hand the number of times, the number of cases where it's at least a reasonable consideration. But if you're going to be electrocuted by anything, including a taser, it'll happen right away. And by right away, I mean seconds. And the other thing that you'll see is that when the heart rhythm is first measured by the paramedics or whomever, it'll be ventricular fibrillation. And in this case, it was not. It was asystole, which means flat line. And Mr. Martin clearly did not go down within seconds, or go down by being unconscious without heart activity within seconds of when the taser was used. So there is no way this was taser induced.
Okay. And so, you stated that you could count on one hand where a taser has, may have actually caused the death.
Yeah, may have, because those cases aren't clean examples of it.
Would those have to be, have a fact pattern where a taser was used directly over someone's heart or the probes touched the heart?
The cases that I've seen where I've worried about it would be somebody really skinny, where one of the probes was right at the heart, not on the bone, but within a few millimeters of the heart. They go down immediately, and the EKGs show ventricular fibrillation.
Did we have that in this case?
None of those.
Okay, so along with no neck trauma, did you find that his airway was, were there any findings that his airway was blocked?
No,
Okay. No compression injuries.
no.
What's a compression injury?
I mean, if you compress someone with enough weight, you can prevent their heart from filling correctly, which can lead to death, can also prevent them from breathing, which can lead to death, but it takes a lot of weight.
There's no indication that his breathing was stopped during being taken into custody. Is that correct?
No, there's no evidence of that at all.
So you did have some disagreements with Mr. Lehman, is that correct? Or Dr. Lehman, excuse me.
When we have, I think, a different approach to some of the certification, I don't know that there's any real true, you're right, you're wrong type thing.
Okay, but you did have a difference of opinion, is that correct, with the foreseeability of this particular result?
I don't know what Dr. Lehman said about foreseeability, but there was no way you would have predicted this, that Mr. Martin would have died under these circumstances.
Okay, so was there anything obvious at the scene